Testing, testing, 1, 2. Stream is coming up soon. Stream is coming up soon. Perfect. Hello, people. Welcome to the stream. I'm going to say hello now. Hello! And I'll also mute the stream so that doesn't come through on the microphone. Got a little bit of a delay. Not sure how long, maybe 10 seconds or so, which is generally what we expect with streaming to YouTube. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to my stream. Obviously, this is just a sort of supplement, not a replacement class, even though I've titled the video replacement class, because it's not compulsory. The classes have been cancelled, unfortunately, because of the Canvas and all the systems associated, not all, but a significant number of systems have been compromised. So yeah, the IT folks are working on that. So no Collaborate Ultra today. So instead, yeah, a bit of a demonstration just through YouTube, and obviously you can use the oh, I've got an echo. Oh no. Why might that be coming through? I should only have. Let me see. Yeah, I think there are two microphones active at the moment. Let me just mute one. Okay. That should have stopped it. Just if you can confirm that. Thanks, Katie. Thanks for contributing to the chat. But no, feel free to say hello for the. I can see 12 watching now. Awesome. Thanks, Max. Hello. So yeah, feel free to pop your questions into the chat. Obviously, you can't use your microphone or anything like that, but yeah, you might have some questions as we go through this exercise. In the announcement, I said that it would be it would be a 3-hour sort of session or 3-hour stream. It's not going to be that long. I reckon because this demonstration that I've got planned is what we would have been doing in the class today. It's the planet building exercise, which I might have talked about. Or you might have had a look at the module that contains, pardon me, the planet building stuff. So that's what we'll do. We'll go through an exercise. It'll take probably about an hour, I reckon, depending on how many questions and things like that asked. I might sort of spend some time addressing those. But yeah, it's going to be a pretty cool outcome. We'll get a photorealistic planet out of this result, and you'll only need what would be available regularly would be, a download where you can, or an attachment where you can download a bunch of resources. Those are just textures. And what I'm going to do is I'll show you, I'll just bring my screen down here so you can see what sort of textures I'm working with. I won't need all of them, but I've got like 5 here. I'm just sort of scrolling through, changing them. To have a look at what types of textures we're working with. So, what you can do is just go to Google, type in texture, and you'll get a bunch of different results. Make sure they're large images. You can see, I'm holding over this one, you can see the dimensions of 5,000 by 3,000, 3,000 by 2,500, so they're all quite large. And they need to be, because they're going to be covering most of the canvas, most of the, the document area. So yeah, jump onto Google Images is the easiest way to do that, and you can change the size requirements. So make sure it's a large image. Alrighty, so let's get cracking. I'm in Photoshop here, and I've got my layers panel out. I've set a document up. This is a 1500 pixel wide doc. I'll just go into my image size, and you can see the details. So 15,000 pixels, 1500 pixels square, and web resolution 72 pixels per inch. So if you go create a new document, just pop those details there, 72 resolution, dimensions, and also RGB color. That's our color mode for this one. Hey Rain, welcome to the stream. How are we going? We got 10 watching. That's all right. I was expecting a handful. Certainly not the whole class. I did, classes were cancelled, so this was an optional thing. I don't know if any of the other teachers are doing a supplementary sort of delivery like this, but it's not compulsory, so I wasn't expecting a lot of students. If we've got sort of, what, maybe 20-ish, let's say 25-ish in each group, we've probably got 75 Cert 4 students. And really, 10 out of 75 is pretty good, I think. Because, yeah, who wouldn't take the opportunity to just have a day off? I know I would if I was a student. So everyone that's watching, you're doing a really good job by kind of, having some sort of, replacement, as I said, replacement class. But, good job tuning in. This is a good thing that you've done. Anyway, 11. We might have a few more coming in. And also the first link that I sent didn't work or took you to the wrong stream. So the second one, obviously, you've got it now. But there might have been a bit of confusion there. So anyway, 11 might get a few more during the demo. So, pardon me. So get your documents set up again. 1500 pixels square. 72 web resolution, and then we're good to go. So first thing we'll do is we'll create a new layer, and with the elliptical marquee, which is the circular dotted line up in your tool panel, the first thing, and probably the most important thing, is to create our first shape. Basically, if you hold shift while you drag that, it's going to keep those it'll keep it proportionate to a circle. Without shift, you'll be able to, make it an oval, etc., etc. So we just want a perfect circle about that size, about half the width and half the height of the page, and about as close to the center as you can possibly get it. Doesn't matter if it's a little bit off, that's no big deal. So this is going to become our base shape. And we need to put something in there. Right now it's empty, as you can see. So doesn't matter what color. I'm just going to use black because I've already got that as my background. And then a good shortcut I like to use is Control Delete or Command Delete if you're on a Mac. And you can see what that's done. It's filled up that selection with that color. So then I'm just going to deselect it, which is Control D or Command D. And that's now going to be renamed Base Shape. And I did that just by double clicking on the layer title, and that's how you can rename a layer. So this base shape here, by the way, I should mention that I've got another video on my channel which basically is this demo, but I wanted to do it live so that people had the opportunity to ask questions and stuff, because obviously you can't do that on a recording. So there's an extra thing that basically covers exactly the same stuff. So here's our base shape, and we're going to be coming back to this. What we're going to be doing to this layer pretty much every time we use this layer is simply just control clicking the thumbnail, or command clicking if you're on a Mac. What that does is it picks up those pixels again. So this is going to allow us to really easily select that shape over and over and over, because that same shape is going to apply to lots of different layers. So so again, that's just control and then clicking the thumbnail of the layer. Right on. So the next thing we'll do is we'll create another new layer, and on this one we're going to do some rendering. We're going to use the rendering function in Photoshop. So again, just new layer. If you've got black and white as your foreground and background colors, that's what you want. You can press the default button there, or you can just press D and that's going to return you to default as well. So default colors are black and white. It doesn't matter which is foreground and which is background. So what we're going to do is on this new layer, we'll go to Filter and then Render. And then this one here, Clouds. And you can see there's no options that come up. It just gives you those clouds. There we go. We've got a nice sort of cloudy sky going on. So these are going to become continents on our planet, our land and our sea areas. But it doesn't look much like that right now. So if you go into your levels function, which is Command L or Control L, you can also go via Image Adjustments and Levels. So bring that up, and we're going to use this these sliders down here to increase the contrast of this clouds layer. And we do that really easily just by dragging these sliders closer together. So you see as I drag the one on the left up, we see increasing darkness, and then the opposite, if I drag the right one down, we see increasing lightness. And as you can see, now we're starting to get, I always think of a cow when I'm doing this, because it looks like that cow pattern. But the closer they come, those sliders, the more, or the less, I should say, greys we see, and it's basically just black and white. So you want it pretty high contrast, perhaps not super, well, it's probably not a big deal if you do have them like right as close together as they can come, which basically means black or white, and there's no, as you can see, there's no grey here anymore. The further apart they are, the more greys will be allowed in. But we don't want much, so I'm just going to have it there. You can see the values that they are now positioned at. 142 for the black, 147 for the light. So as you can see, it's just a range of about 5 points across this sort of middle space here in the histogram. So if that's what yours looks like, that's good. You can mine are close to the middle, so we've got a fairly even amount of black and white. The closer these are clustered up to the top, or to the right, I should say, you'll see, okay, this is much more black now. And if we put it down towards the other end, we're going to see much more white. So if you want an even balance of land and sea, then you want to have them close to the middle. So I'm going to go with that. And okay. And I'm just going to keep my eye on the chat. So feel free to ask your questions and things. Or even just positive reinforcement for me. That always helps. So like, great, that's a great trick. Wow, you're so smart at Photoshop. That'd be nice to hear. No, you don't have to stroke my ego. That's okay. We've got the cow pattern now, and this cow pattern is now going to become continents. What look much more like continents. So we're going to go back to base shape and control click it, just like I was saying before. And now we can see the part of that pattern that's been captured by the circle. Thanks, Max. And obviously we've got too much of that pattern. We need to get rid of a lot of it. I suppose an option you've got at the moment is to just deselect that. One thing you could do is you could use your move tool, and you can actually move this layer around and position in the middle the part of that pattern that you like the most. Like when I saw that, I'm just going to undo that. Just Control Z I just did then. I'm looking at that and I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably okay. But I could easily, reposition my clouds layer to focus on a more interesting continent, maybe. I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. I like this part here. Yeah, I'm liking that. All right, so once you've got your selection active again, so again, that was just Control and then clicking on the... Thanks, Keys. Oh, sweetie. Yes, once you've got the shape selected again, so again, Control clicking on the base shape, what you can then do is invert that selection and delete all that content on that top layer. So to do that, a shortcut is Control-Shift-I or Command-Shift-I. And the way that you can tell that it's been inverted is now you should be able to see a dotted line around the actual canvas. Before it was just around the shape. Now it's around the shape and the canvas. So the thing that's happened there is everything inside the shape was selected before. Everything apart from that shape is selected now. That's what we want. It's captured all the pattern that we don't want. So then we can just press Command X or Control X. And as you can see, that's deleted all that unnecessary content, leaving us with something that's a bit closer to a planet now. We can see it starting to take shape. So the next thing we can do here, if we reselect that shape, so again, Command clicking, Control clicking on the base shape thumbnail, making sure that the top layer is selected. And before we go on, what we can do is we can rename this one Land, and Sea. Always a good idea to rename layers because it helps you understand what content lies on that layer. So, we're going to do a function called Spherize here, and what that's going to do is it's going to make these shapes look as though they're wrapping around a globe. This is a pretty cool effect here. So, make sure it's selected, make sure that the top layer is the one that you've got highlighted, and then we'll go back to Filter, and this time it's Distort, and then Spherize. Yeah, I had the same thing with mine, Katie. It's probably just the background shape that just sort of, because it's in the same exact position, it sort of appears as though there's like this very thin line of black. I think I've got the same sort of appearance on mine, so nothing to worry about. I'm going to zoom out here. So this is the spherized preview window, and you can see what's happening. I'm just going to bring this back down to 0, which matches, you know, the original, just so you can see the effect take place. So as I push that up, see how the center is sort of pushed forward, and the edges kind of cling to the edges. And what that looks like is it looks like there's this sort of dome sort of underneath that shape, underneath that pattern that's kind of pushing it and shaping it according to the right geometry. So if you push that up to 100% and OK, what you should then see is something that looks much closer to the way that shapes wrap around a sphere. So that's the difference there. I'm just going to deselect, Control D, then I'm just going to Control Z and back and forth a few times just so you can see the difference. So that's how it was initially, and that's how it looks after a spherized. So yeah, we've got those same sorts of characteristics we see when we're looking at the Earth from space, where we get, yeah, that sort of concentration around the edges. Those shapes kind of cling, and we see them, yeah, sort of curve more towards the center. We see them a little bit more clearly. So really good effect there. I'm liking the way that my land and sea is balanced. I feel like my land is the black and my sea is the white. It doesn't matter which one you think is which. It really doesn't matter at all. I suppose if you want more land than sea, choose the one that's got more, visible, the one that's represented more, whether it's white or black. You can see, even though I tried to get a little bit more sea in there, or a bit more black, it's pretty evenly balanced. But I like it. So, the next thing we're going to do, I'm just going to check there's no questions or anything like that. That's all good. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a mask out of these shapes that we've just got. Masking in Photoshop is basically a way to hide and show content without actually deleting anything. So you can do the same thing by deleting using the eraser. And what that's doing is it's taking pixels away, which is a destructive method of editing. We got into that destructive versus non-destructive theory a little bit last week. So we're going to do some, we're going to do a little bit of destructive stuff here, but the point of this exercise, and something I should have mentioned earlier or led with, is that it introduces a wide range of adjustments, edits, menus, all sorts of things. There's lots of area covered in this demo, in this exercise. So yeah, it's a wide range that we're looking at today. So yeah, we will be doing a little bit of non-destructive, a little bit of destructive, all sorts of things going on. Okay, so as I said, the next thing we're going to do is mask or make a mask out of our land and sea areas. So just go ahead and grab your lasso tool and just trace everything. No, that's not how we do it. That's not how we do it. What we're going to do is we're going to use the select and then color range function. If you clicked on that, you should see the color range window pop up. And what you're now able to do is you've got the eyedropper tool now, which is the tool associated with this window. You can use this tool to sample the black or the white in your planet. See how, depending on where I click, it will pick up a different selection. Okay, what might happen there? What might be happening there for yours, Katie, is you might not have the selection active. So if you've got that circular selection active and then you go into Spherize, it should contain it just to that selection. So control click on the base shape and then try it again, and hopefully that fixes it up. Right on. So let me know if that's fixed that up as well, Katie, if you can. So yeah, based on where you click black or white, or which one you sample, the selection is going to be different. So the selection is sampled in white. If I click on the white, you can see how it matches so the black and the blacks are the same areas, the white and the whites are the same areas. If I do the black, see how it inverses? So yeah, your selection is going to be what is represented here in the window in white. So I'm going to sample the black. This is the area I'm going to make my land. And then I'm going to go okay. And what you should see, if you've done that correctly, you should now see the dotted line. Awesome. Good stuff, Katie. What you should see is the dotted line going around your continents and your islands and everything now. All those coastlines are now dotted, the marching ants. The ants dominate the coasts in this planet. That's exactly what we want. We wanted to be able to achieve a selection out of the shapes that we had in our land and sea. So then a couple of easy steps is just to create a new layer and then click on this button here, which is the Add Layer Mask. And it's really important that this selection has remained active the whole time. So if you click that Layer Mask button, what you should now see on this new top layer is a blank, blank space. There's nothing on that layer. But then next to it, attached to it, is this mask. So I'll just turn a few things off here. If I turn this background on, you'll see that. Oh no, that's not going to work because there's nothing on this layer. Once we put something in, I won't bother doing it just yet. We'll do it for our next step. But once we bring something into this layer, what I'll do is actually I'll just fill this layer with a color so you can see what the deal is. Ooh, see how I chose red, but it's showing up as gray? It's because I've got my mask selected. So you can't have colors in masks. You can have black, white, and gray, but you can't have colors. So I'm just going to do that again. So if I fill up this top layer with red, which I'll do right now, see how it's only visible in the land areas? That's because all this black in this layer mask, that corresponds to, like a mask. So what you can imagine is something that's like hiding the content that lies underneath. So we've got like the big red layer. If I delete or disable the mask, we can see, yep, that red exists all over the layer. Once the mask is active again, it's blocking out, 90% of it, only revealing the layer contents in the white spaces of the mask. So with mask, the main key to remember is white represents visibility and black represents invisibility. And all the grays in between represent different levels of transparency. So you can see some where I had some grays in my land. You can see how there are some sort of transparent areas of this red here. So that corresponds to all those grays. All right, so we're not going to leave a color here. What we're going to do is we're going to bring our textures in. So earlier I said to jump onto Google and find a few textures to use. Really, anything will work. And it would be great to have all sorts of different textures because we'll get some really diverse looking planets going on. So I'm just going to select all that content there and just delete it. So this is how you can go about bringing in some content into Photoshop. My favorite way, I think the easiest way by far, is just to drag the image onto the canvas space like so. And after a second, it will do it because they're large images, so it might take a second or two to display. But yeah, that's how you can do that. Once you've put something in, you just need to approve it by ticking it. I'm just going to make that a little bit smaller and put that right in the middle. Cool. So there's our texture. I'm just going to see how big that is against the planet. Cool. You probably only want your texture to be a little bit, oops, you do, a little bit bigger than the planet. So I'm just going to, pardon me, the way I'm controlling, I realize if I do something and I don't mention what I'm doing, that's confusing. If I Control T or Command T on this top layer, that brings up the transform box. And I'm able to do things like move it around and rescale it. So I just control it from the corners. These days, by default, the image stays in proportion. Previously, you had to hold Shift down, but now it's the opposite way. So it will stay in proportion anyway. If you hold Shift down these days, you'll be able to, do all this kind of non-proportional scaling. Took me a little while to get my head around that because I was so used to, holding Shift. And so every time I held Shift, I was able to do all sorts of crazy stuff. And I'm like, I don't like that. Cool. So there's our texture in. There's one final thing that we need to do to it before we apply the mask. And that is change this to a rasterized layer. Currently, it's a smart object thumbnail. And what that means is this display here, this image, is based on the actual file, because these are all their own files, not necessarily Photoshop files, they're all JPEGs, but because I dragged it in from its file onto Photoshop, it's a smart object, so it knows what the original resolution is, it knows what the original size is. What that means is I can scale it down like so to a really small size like this, and then bring it back up and not lose any resolution. See how it's just as sharp as it was before? If it was rasterized and I scaled it down and brought it back up, what we're going to see is all that pixelation. And generally we don't want that. We definitely don't want that. But in this case, what we do want to do is change it to a rasterized layer, because we're going to be doing an effect to it, which still works if it was a smart object, but it just creates a little bit of messy layer structure. And it's not necessarily an issue, but just, you know, because we're sort of newish to Photoshop, I don't want to get too much kind of confusing stuff happening in the layers. Hopefully by the end of this document, you can look at your layer panel and have a good idea of, okay, that's how it's structured. Yeah, that sort of makes sense. So I don't want to introduce anything too complex too early. So anyway, not a problem, Rain. That's cool. This will also be saved, so you'll be able to review it later on if you wish. So feel free to come back to it later. But yeah, thanks for tuning in anyway, being one of the dozen or so. Oh, someone's just popped back in. Sweet. So to rasterize it, I've talked about it a little bit. Let's do it. What we can do is we can just right click on the layer. So just anywhere in the sort of text area, not on the thumbnail. You'll see you'll get a different bunch of options if you click on the thumbnail. So right click on the sort of text area and then rasterize, which is about a third of the way down. And all you'll see happening is that little icon will disappear. But that's good, that's what we want. So we're almost ready to apply the mask to it, but before we do, what we're going to do is we're going to spherize the texture, just like we spherized the shapes in our land and sea. So what we'll do is we'll reselect the base shape, so control click on that or command click on that. Make sure the texture layer is the one that you've got selected, and then we'll do the same we did before. Filter, distort, spherize, and that's already at 100, so that's fine. Okay, and so now you should see a kind of a bubble in your texture, or what sort of looks like a bit of a bubble. So now the really satisfying step is doing this. All we need to do is drag that mask up to our texture layer, simply like that. Just a click and a drag. If you missed that, let me just do it again. So the mask, that's this one here. We drag that up to the texture layer, and you should see a blue outline. And then what you've got is what looks like this land sort of texture wrapping around a globe and also bordered. So it doesn't go over the whole globe. We can see where it transitions from land to sea. This is pretty cool, pretty cool. So we've got our first texture in. Let's bring another one in now. I'm going to do the same exact process that I just did before. So I'm going to go back to my planet resources. Which one will I use? I haven't used this. I've done this demo a couple of times this week for some other classes. I'm going to use this orangey, browny, rusty type texture. Again, we just scale it down so it's only about as big as the planet is. Alrighty. This has the same problem the previous one had, which is that it's a smart object, so we just need to rasterize this texture, or rasterize the layer. We'll control click our base shape to get our circle, and then again making sure that the texture is what's selected or highlighted. We go up to filter, and something you might have noticed is the spherize function is actually the first, in the list now. So with filter, the most recent filter that you've applied, that will be the first item down, just as the recent filter. So feel free to use that. You don't have to go back into distort and spherize. You can just go spherize straight up. Yeah. Cool, so that's done the same thing. It's spherized the texture, the second texture. And now what we need to do is put a mask on this layer. But we can't do what we did before just by clicking and dragging, because it will take it off that initial layer. All we need to do is just just feel free to deselect as well, Control or Command D. All we need to do to make a copy of this is hold Alt or Option before we drag it. That's the method for copying across pretty much all Adobe programs. So Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, all of them have that same function where if you hold Alt or Option and click and drag something, it's going to make a copy. Let's put it to the test. So I'm holding Alt down. I'm on a PC, so it's Alt for me. And that's Option if you're on a Mac. Holding it down, clicking and dragging, and you can see the arrow is now, I've got a double arrow, black and white, suggesting that it's going to copy. Release, and there we go. So you should see 2 masks now, one for each texture. So there's a few sort of slightly complex steps there. So just will be good now. Just let me know for those folks tuning in. If you've got if you're in good shape with your documents so far, it'll be good to know. And of course, if you're having any troubles, let me know as well. But yeah, that's a pretty monumental step there. We've got a couple of different things coming in now. So 2 different textures, but they're over the exact same place, as makes sense because we use the same exact mask for them. So they're both being revealed in exactly the same place. Max looking for a texture and missed the last minute. So I'll bring one more in actually, just so you can see that, but I'll delete that because I only want 2. So I've got my textures here. I'll use this one now, this sort of bluey, corally looking one. So I'll drag it in firstly. That's already about the right size, so I'll just go straight to OK. So there's sort of like 3 steps: rasterizing the layer, spherizing the texture, and then putting a mask on the texture. So to rasterize, really simple. We just go ahead and right-click the layer, not the thumbnail, but the layer itself. Right-click and rasterize. And then we need to spherize, just like we did with the planet shape, with the shapes. So I'll go and click on base shape, and control-click on that is. And then on the texture, I'll go up and go to filter and spherize. I go distort, spherize, but again, it's the most recent thing, so I can use the recent spherize as well. Cool, that's done the spherizing to the texture. And then we duplicate one of the existing masks. So to duplicate it, all we need to do is hold Alt or Option. So I'm going to hold Alt, click and drag it up to the most recent texture, and now there we go. That's this 3rd texture in there as well. So they're all in the same place because the same mask has been used for every single one. So really, we can only see one texture at a time. But now what we're going to do, and hopefully that helped you out there, Max. Now what we need to do is sort of blend them together. And what this is going to create is a bunch of diversity on our planet's surface. We can see right now, if I was just to use this one, it's a very sort of monotonous planet, really, isn't it? Because we've got the same sort of color and texture across all the lands. And it's the same thing with this one. Geez, it's probably the boring. This is a desert planet, this one. No worries, Max, all good. And then this one here as well, it's got some interesting colors going on. So they're all pretty cool textures, but there's only one of them visible at a time. So this is how we can go ahead and put some variety in there, some diversity. So you might want to zoom in for this one. Just Control plus is one way, Alt or Option and scrolling. But if you're on a trackpad, just sort of squeeze and pinch and you can zoom in that way. Okay, so what we're going to do now is affect the masks. I'm just going to have the first 2, then I might look at the 3rd one and do some stuff to that as well. So if we go into the mask for the 2nd texture, so the one that's above the 1st texture, doesn't matter what order they're in. If you put the first one you brought in, if that's on top, the 2nd one, if that's on top, it doesn't matter at all. Doesn't matter at all. What we can do is we can go ahead and use our brush. You can hit B to get your brush tool. And oh, look at that, mine's very, very big. So I'm just going to bring that down a bit smaller. You also want to make sure it's really soft as well. So the hardness is 0%. And oopsie-doo, I accidentally put a mark there. And then you're going to want black as your color. Black as your foreground color. What this will allow us to do is it will allow us to mask further areas in the mask or hide more areas in the mask. So if I was to hide parts of this mask here for texture 2, what that's going to do is it's going to selectively reveal areas underneath, which is the second texture. This is all you need to do. Have the mask selected so the white corners are around the white corners around the mask and not the layer itself. So like so. And then what we're going to do is simply just brush where you want that second texture to come in. Let's have a look. There we go. Look at that. So we've got like this completely different climate, this completely different region now, simply by doing a different texture, revealing a second texture. One thing that might sort of happen is if you reverse that. So if I was to start, I'm just going to bring white and black here now. If I was to start putting white in oops, that should, I thought that was white, and hide that texture again, I might accidentally do something like this, like push it into the ocean. And as you can see, that looks pretty incorrect. So a way to avoid that is by control clicking on the original mask, so the one at the bottom, just like we do for base shape, control clicking or command clicking. And as you can see, that picks up the selection again. And if you've got an active selection while you brush, what that means is you're only able to brush into that selection. So now check it out. I'm able to, re-reveal that texture, but if I try and brush it over the ocean, I'm out of luck because the selection doesn't go over that space. It only goes over the land. So that might be something you want to try as well. So again, that was just control clicking on the original layer mask, this one here. That's the one that you don't want to affect. That's the one that's going to stay the same. The ones that you want to affect are the ones that are above that original one. So this step is I was going to say a little bit time consuming, but it isn't really. It's all about how much sort of diversity you want to put in. So again, have a bit of a play around with that. Go into your mask for your second texture. Make sure you've got black as the color, a large brush, and also a very, very soft brush as well. Because it's all that softness that achieves that blending. If it was really hard, then this is what you'd see. And might look like a crater. Might be an alright way to do a crater. But yeah, if you want to blend the textures together, you certainly want to use a soft brush. So yeah, I'm just going to do this for a little bit and just put some different blends in, thinking about where the regions might change. So something like that. So you can certainly, do what I'm doing and just like click instead of brushing it. I'm just sort of clicking every sort of odd area to introduce this sort of orangey texture. As you can see, it brings in different color and different texture mainly, but difference is the main thing. We've got some variety happening, like so. So then you can do, if you've put a second or a third texture in, you can do the same thing to this one as well. So for this, what I might do is because I've affected this this texture, I'm just going to replace I'm going to replace the mask that was there, just by exactly the same way we did it before. Alt, dragging it up, and because there was already a mask, it just asked me if I wanted to replace that. Yes, I do want to replace it. So now we're seeing this additional texture going on. It's hidden the middle one. So all I need to do now is push further black into this very top texture. So essentially we'll have 3 different masks, and they'll be less and less visible as we go along. So now it's getting really diverse. Hey, look at all this lovely, interesting stuff that can happen. You can certainly have a lot of fun with this sort of stuff and spend a lot of time playing around with different looks and different feels and things like that. Like so. I'm liking how that looks now. I've got some really interesting lands happening out of that. Perfect. I'm hoping everyone else is enjoying what they're producing. You can get it looking pretty awesome. Alright. Feel free to keep going with that. I'm going to do a new step now, and that is new layer on top of everything. And then we'll copy the original mask. So Alt or Option, drag the original mask up to the top layer, like so. Because there's nothing on the layer, we don't see anything happening yet. But we'll do some stuff now, won't we? Let's do some stuff. What we'll do on this layer is just color. We don't need any content for this. We just need to change our color in our color picker. If you wanted to make it look sort of earth or somewhat earth-like, I would suggest choosing a green, because this step is going to introduce a little bit of plant life into our planet. But maybe the plants on your planet are a completely different color. They might be purple or pink. So feel free to choose a wild, wacky color. But I'm going to go with, I'm going to go with the green. And it's also something you can change later on as well if you wanted to. Okay, so with this green, if I was to brush it right now, as you can see, well, that doesn't look great. It certainly doesn't incorporate the texture, and it's just way too strong, all that sort of stuff. So there's a couple things we can do. One is drag our opacity for our brush. Now you'll see that in your control panel, right next to the mode of the brush, which is normal. If I go into that opacity and I drag that down to, let's say, 25%, now when I do a brush stroke on the land, you can see it's not as strong, and it incorporates the texture as well. And look at that. It looks like we're getting some plant life happening in that area. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm loving how this is starting to look. Max, what's a good website for textures? I just use Google for this sort of stuff. I just go into Google, and if I got a window down here, I'm just going to bring a window down. Just give me 2 seconds. So I just type in texture, right? And of course you get a lot of different stuff, but a lot of them won't be really appropriate. Many will be great. So what you can do to find more appropriate ones that are going to be more useful is go into your settings and then advanced search. And then in the size section, you can go into any size and then define how big you want that. So for this, I would say like larger than 2 megapixels. That'll ensure that anything that comes back should be at least like maybe 2000 pixels wide. So all these results now should be, oh, there we go, a planet texture itself. There's Jupiter. Feel free to use Jupiter. So you can see this one, 3600 wide. This one here, nearly 2000 wide. So they're all large. This one would be a good one to play with. Bit of marble. Yeah, that'd be a cool texture to use. So yeah, I think just like Google for this kind of stuff, but like for, you know, better quality photographs, you'd be going to like, royalty-free stock photo sites like Unsplash or that's our kind of our main one that we push. Unsplash. It's Pexels is another one. There's a few out there. So yeah, whichever textures you like. So yeah, the last thing I was doing was just pushing some green into some of these lands here. Now the key is I've got a really low opacity. It's not very strong, but that's fine. We don't need it to be too strong. So in this step, think about like where you would expect to see your forests. If you're going for something Earth-like, you might be concentrating them around the equator, which is certainly where we find most of our forests. So some of these islands can become just like completely tropical paradises now with this blue, with this green that we're bringing in. And then some deserts in the polar regions. Other thing you can do with this is change the blending mode of the layer. So there's no blending mode happening right now. It's just straight up, putting that color in. And the more solid it becomes, the more it hides that texture. So see how it's just like not really incorporating that after I push all that heaviness down? You can change the blending mode now. So if you go to the top layer and then where it says normal in your layers panel, click on that and then just scroll through them and you'll see the colors change as you do that. And you might find some that look really nice and others that don't look quite as nice. Some of the darker ones might work better. But as you can see, I'm getting some slight variations in in each of these different blending modes. Here's difference. We'll just sort of like invert colors. That looks awesome. Yeah, so all sorts of different things can happen now. But I'm going to keep mine on, let's see, maybe darken or multiply. No, those loses a lot of vibrancy in multiply. I'm going to go with darken. So there we go. We've got some cool variation happening in our land areas. Some plant life coming in. Feel free to put some different colors in. So I've got all these greens going on, but maybe there's some some purple in some places. Who knows, hey? This is your planet. You make the rules. So what really helps is interesting textures. As you can see, that bluey kind of rocky texture that I had, that, yeah, I'm really liking how that's sort of showing. Look at that beautiful multicolored land surface. I love it. I'd love to visit this place. Okay, how's everyone's planet looking? Feel free to pop a message into the chat. Talk about your planet and how it's looking. I might just push a bit of white over this just to get rid of that one. I don't like that one particular spot I wanted to bring out. Okay. So that's looking good. We've put a lot of effort into our land. Now we'll put a bit of effort into our sea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do something I've done many times already. Control click on base shape, picking up that circle again. And then I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to put it just below all the textures. Also, at this point, what you can do is you can delete that original land and sea layer. That's done its job. We use that to generate those masks. Now that those masks have been made, it's all good. So on this one, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, I can turn off the base shape actually. What that will do is it will turn, yeah, all that sea off. We're only looking at the land now. Awesome. Awesome, Katie. I would certainly suggest you save these once we're done. And then next week, when we're hopefully back on Collaborate Ultra again, it would be good to see what people have done. So on this new blank layer behind all the textures, you want to have that circular selection active. And then this is a very satisfying step. This is when the planet becomes really kind of like lifelike. And there's other steps that we do that can increase that, but this is certainly one big milestone movement here. Go into your color picker and choose the colors you want your ocean to be. I'm going to go with, yeah, sort of something Earth-like, so some blues. So I'm going to choose like a slightly lighter blue and then a slightly darker blue. So you can see I've got sort of two different blues going on there. Just one a little bit lighter than the other. So then, if you go into your gradient tool, you can just press G to get to your gradient tool. And then up in your control panel, you'll see that there's 5 options for different styles of gradients. The first one, which might be selected, is the linear style. You want the one that's called radial gradient, and it should be the second in the list. So radial gradient, gradient tool, 2 different colors, one a little bit lighter than the other. And then you're just going to click and drag on the, I can't see my cursor. Where's my cursor gone? Jeez, it's so hard to see when it's transparent background. You're just going to go ahead and click and drag that that gradient into your planet like so. And what that does is it will make the ocean color. And the reason I chose that slightly lighter version and a slightly darker version of the blue is so that we get that kind of lighting to look somewhat realistic. Feel free to try it again. Like if you placed it and you're not liking where you placed it, just do the gradient again. You might need to make it bigger or smaller. You can see if I drag a smaller distance, it's a much smaller radius. But yeah, just get a bit of a sense of where you think it should go. So maybe mine right in the middle there. But it looks much better than it does if it was just a flat color. Because as you can see, it sort of gives that sort of depth, or it helps to achieve that depth. So that's looking much, much better now, hey. I'm just because I'm not loving the color that I end up with, I'm just going to Control U on this layer. Control or Command if you're on a Mac. So Command U, Control U. What that's done is it's brought up the hue and saturation change. And I'm just going to desaturate it a little bit because that blue, I think, is just a bit too vibrant. And I might just darken it. Yeah, that's better. I like how that looks now. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, and you know what? Something else that I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to my color. Just something that I noticed is... actually, I need a new layer because... if I was to put... because of the blending mode I had for my color layer, darken, that would exclude anything that's light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer with no blending mode. And I'm just going to copy that same mask. And with this one, what I'm going to do with white, brush, low opacity, I'm just going to put some white up in the polar regions because that's going to look like snow. And that's going to kind of just make it look, again, just a little bit more like rules apply here. Like, you know, there's weather, there are climates, there are things like that. I don't really have a northern pole landmass. As you can see, it's pretty much ocean up there. And we can't really see anything in the South Pole either. But that will look really nice if you've got just a little bit of polar caps going on. Alright. How's that? It's looking alright, hey? One really easy step that really makes a huge difference is inverting your background. If you go to your background, turn that back on, and then just Control I, that will flip it from white to black. And wow, that makes a huge difference, as you can see, because now we have it positioned in what looks like space. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so we're mostly there. We've done a lot of work so far, and we're certainly looking like a good planet's coming out of this. So, next thing to do is to create some atmosphere. So we've got land, we've got sea, and we've got different climates and regions and things like that. But we don't seem to have an atmosphere. There doesn't look to be a sky or anything like that. If you looked at a picture of Earth from space, you'd see that there's a bit of a glow happening, and that's what we know as our atmosphere. So to do an atmosphere, what we can do is we can duplicate our base shape layer. You can duplicate that just by dragging it down to the new layer button, or another way you can do it is just Control or Command J, and that makes a duplicate as well. So with the duplicate, bring it up to the tippy top of your layer panel, and you can turn it back on, and what that will look like now is it looks like, you know, a big old eclipse. Of course, because we put that black circle on top of our planet, we've hidden everything. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to double-click on that layer. Not on the title, because that will just ask you to rename it. So double-click on the thumbnail, and that'll open up the Layer Style window. In here, we can change our Advanced Blending Fill Opacity, which is the second slider down, to 0. And what that does, as you can see, is it wipes out all of that fill opacity, bringing it down to 0%, which is completely transparent. And now we can see through that black shape to our planet. So in here, we're going to apply a bit of inner glow and a bit of outer glow. And they're going to look really, really cool. I'm going to start with the outer glow. Now, because I had done this demo a few times already this week, it remembers my recent adjustments in the layer style. So that's why, as soon as I clicked it, it looks pretty like appropriate. But I have done things like change the color, change the size, and change the opacity to sort of get what I feel looks about right. What you could do is you could have a reference image if you wanted to go for something that looks, you know, really Earth-like. But it's not super important to match it up to anything. It's really, you know, the main thing here, as you can probably tell, is just exploring and getting some familiarity with a lot of these different functions. So yeah, obviously a bit too big if I put it up to 250 pixels. So you just have to think about what you think looks right. How strong should it be? How weak? What color kind of thing. So I reckon that's okay for my outer glow. Now I'm going to add the inner glow. And that's the atmosphere that you can see over the Earth. The glow, the outer glow, is what you could see sort of like just around the sort of edges. The inner glow is kind of that stuff that you'd see creeping into the internal parts of the globe, or from our point of view, that is. And that was already, yeah, I think pretty good. What a difference that last change made. This is the difference that it makes. That's it before, and that's it after. Huge difference. Awesome. This, you could call this done at this point. Like, it's a good looking planet, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. So this is a good looking digital illustration that we've done. But we can do some more stuff to it and get it further, push it further into that photorealism. One of those things is adding a shadow, or adding night and day. Right now, if we were to be looking at that, we'd be saying, oh, okay, like this is the daytime side of the planet. Obviously, on the other side, it's all nighttime. Now, usually you see a little bit of night and a little bit of day. So that's what we'll do. We'll create a new layer on top of everything else. And one thing I haven't really been doing is renaming layers, even though I said it's a great habit to get into. And it is, but yeah, that's something I've kind of neglected. That's all right. This isn't our real class. This is kind of your Photoshop after dark, live and unplugged. So yeah, we might be breaking a few rules. Okay, just relax. So with this new top layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my brush to black, or my color to black. And I'm going to make it a very, very large brush, about the same size as the globe itself. And I'm just going to test it. I'm going to see what that looks like as a mark. Oh, yep, I've forgotten that I have a very weak opacity, so I'm going to bring that back up to 100. And I'll try that again. So I can see that, okay, so that is too small. So I'm going to make the hardness a little bit bigger. There we go, that's a bit better. So I'm going to make the brush a bit smaller and the hardness a bit bigger, and try that once again. And I'm liking how that looks. So what I've just done there is I've changed I was doing that with shortcuts, the shift and bracket keys I was using there. But you can change that in control panel. So hardness, I've got that at about 75, and my size for my brush is about 900 pixels. And you can see when I brush that over the planet, it makes what looks like that kind of, what's called the Terminator. Not the Arnie style Terminator. The Terminator in the kind of global sense is the termination between shadow and light. So that's twilight is what we're looking at there. Twilight between the black and the visible planet. That's daytime becoming night, or nighttime becoming day. Now, if I was to leave that there, I'm just going to undo it. I'm just going to position it just a little bit better. Now, you can have the majority of your planet in darkness at night, or you could do something like this. I'm going to brush the whole thing, and then if I change the brush stroke to white, and I change the what will I do here? Multiply. If you change the blending mode to multiply for your top layer, and then you were to, it's a bit hard to do this time because you can't sort of see the planet, and you can't have it selected either, because then it will only apply to, actually no, that's not a big deal. I was going to say, you don't want to have it select, whoops, you don't want to have it selected because it will do some things, but, oh no, the problem is that it hides the glow. That's right, no, that's why we can't do that. Sorry, ignore me. I'm just going to go and do a few steps. What I was trying to do then was create a what basically looks like, oopsie-doo, and softer. Something that looks like that. So like the majority of the planet is at daytime. I mean, you could probably just do it like that. That looks okay, I suppose. I guess that works. That's fine. It's just brushing over the top of your planet, making sure that it's on a separate layer. I suppose you could also do something like this, like just half and half. Like, yay. Now, you might be thinking, why would we do that if basically what we're doing is hiding all this awesome work we've done? And I'd be like, yeah, that's true. Why would we do that if we're hiding all our work? Well, we don't have to leave it that heavy. Now, I'm just trying to get it back to how I had it sort of before. With a sort of larger and sharper, and a bit smaller now. Alright, that's pretty close. Maybe just a tad bigger. Alright, yep. I'm liking that. So, yeah, I've hidden about 90% of the planet now, and I've done a lot of work that's basically not visible anymore. What you can do is you can just drag the opacity of this top layer down a little bit. And what that will do is it'll still make it look as though it's shaded, it's in night, but it then reveals some detail back in your planet. It might be a little bit hard to see on screen, but on my screen here I can see, I can now see those textures, those colors, and everything. So maybe 70, somewhere like 70, 80%, that would do a good job. So it's best of both worlds. We now see it lit and dark, night and day, but we still see the details in that nighttime part of the planet. Now, this is where it gets really cool. You might be thinking it's cool as hell already, and it is. It is cool. But we can do some further stuff now, some last little steps. It's really going to sell this as a awesome looking sort of photorealistic outcome. I'm going to go to my background layer, and I'm going to create a new layer on top of my background. Just a new blank layer. I've already got my brush tool, so I'm going to make that much, much smaller. And I'm going to flip that around to white. And then we're just going to do this. Make stars. No, I'm joking again. I'm playing all sorts of fibs on you. We won't do it that way. We'll do something that's going to make that much, much more efficient and easier. Okay, so go into your brush presets. Or brush settings, sorry. It's this little icon here, but if you can't find that, go to Window, and you should be able to see brushes and brush settings here. So brush settings. What we're going to do with our brush settings is make a few adjustments to that brush style to basically get it to look like, when we do a stroke, instead of just a continual line like that, we're going to get something that looks much more like a scattering of stars. And it's actually pretty easy. So first of all, we've got our shape, and of course we just want like a basic circular shape. Size quite small. I'm going to make mine 3 pixels. 75 is okay for the hardness. Now the spacing, we want to push that all the way up to 1000%. And already you can see that's going to make a huge difference. Already we can see sort of what looks like a very regular assortment of stars there. Now a few extra things we can do. Shape dynamics. If we go down to shape dynamics and change the size jitter, what this is going to do is going to make some big and some small. Awesome. That's a good effect right there. Scattering. Push that scatter all the way up. And now they're not going to be all in the exact same line. They're going to scatter a little bit like so. Nice. And another one we can do is in transfer. I don't know why it's called transfer, but in transfer, the opacity jitter, if we push that up as well, now some are going to look really dim and others are going to look really bright. So see those few changes that we just did? Makes such a massive difference. Now these are very small, so I'm not sure if you've got the stream in full screen, you can probably see it, but if you're just looking at the regular default view, it might be hard to see these stars, but it does a great job. It's just these few changes. So what I'm doing is I'm just pushing my brush around, and because they're scattering and spacing, I can't really see the lines that I'm making. And I am indeed making lines, but it doesn't look like that in the result. Can people see the stars as I brush them on? Are they visible, or are they a bit too hard to see on the stream? It certainly adds a good amount of realism. You can also change the color. If I wanted to have a few maybe pink stars, I can do that. It's a bit hard to see. I might just make the brush just a little bit bigger. You can see them? Perfect. So yeah, so some stars going to have a little bit of a different color. Let's get some blue stars. So yeah, this is a cool step. Really easy. If you know what to do, like if you know where to look, what did we do there? We just chose a shape, did a few extra things like push the size jitter up, the scattering, the spacing, and the opacity jitter. And then all of a sudden, we've got something that just works beautifully. And maybe some red stars as well. Some red dwarfs that are out there. Or red giants. It's too red. Too red. Brilliant. Another thing you can do if you wanted to make like what looks kind of like a galaxy from our perspective is just concentrate a line. Like so. So now I'm getting like this really kind of... I might bring that back to white though. See how I've got like a really kind of condensed kind of concentration of stars sort of going top to bottom, left to right. Or right to left. Looks kind of like a galaxy from our perspective. Awesome. That's looking really cool. And one last thing, so we're nearly done with this. One last thing, we've just put in a bunch of other solar systems with all those stars. What we can now do is we can put some civilization into our actual planet. Let's breathe some real life. We know that there's life down there. Let's put some civilization in. And this is how we can do that. If we go and create a new layer on the very top, and then we drag, or copy rather, one of our masks onto that layer. The original mask, not one of the ones that have been affected, because those have got all sorts of changes in. So one of the original masks. That means we won't be able to brush anything outside of the land areas. Now we can use that exact same brush, or maybe a similar brush, but maybe with just some slight changes. I'm going to go to the top right corner of my brush settings, and I'm going to click on New Brush Preset. I'm going to call it Stars. I'm going to call it Stars 4 because I've already got a bunch of Stars brushes. And what that does is it allows you to save that as a preset. So now if I go into my brushes, brushes. Brush presets. What the hell? Where are my brushes? Oh, down here. Stars. It's Stars 2. That's what I called it. Stars 4 or 5. But anyway, oh, there's another one there. So in your brush menu, you should be able to see if you've saved that as a new brush preset, you should be able to see that. So that means I'll be able to go to a different brush, and you can see, back to sort of a normal style, like so, and then back to the stars one. So really, really easily being able to sort of just chop and change between them. So that means you don't have to go back and make all of those changes every single time. Alright, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to bring my scatter back a little bit. I'm going to bring the spacing back a little bit. And I'll also bring I'll turn the opacity jitter off. Spacing, let's space that out just a little bit more. Just going to see what that looks like. Yep. Cool. So does anyone, you might have an idea of what's going on here. When you're looking at the Earth from space at night, the way cities look is they're just little dots of light. They're little stars on our surface. And that's how we know that that's the first sort of indication that there's intelligent life. Well, intelligent is debatable, but there's life. So what we can do is on this new layer with the mask attached, I'm going to use like a yellow as my color here. And then the important thing is that the mask is active here, because that means you won't be able to brush any cities into the sea. No cities in the sea, only in the lands. And so now, as you can see, it's just a matter of where you put those cities. And you might concentrate them in certain areas to make population centers. I'll just go back to Google real quick and just sort of show what we're getting at. So yeah, this is the way that these are sort of photo manipulated, but Here's a good one. So you can sort of see how, where the people are. That's the sort of any alien observer, if they had no idea what was going on planet Earth, if they were just to look at Earth at night from space, they'd be getting a good idea. If they were in an attacking mood, if they were somewhat hostile, well, the good news is there's a lot of stuff going up in the northern hemisphere that they've got to target before they get down here. So yeah, but anyway, that's how those cities display at night, and that's exactly what we're trying to achieve here in this last little change. So you might have some rural cities as well. You might have a demilitarized zone like in Korea. Like one half of the country is all lit up and the other half is in darkness. No, not in my planet. My planet's peaceful. So yeah, it's city time. So that's a good reason as to why we have that shadow there, because we wouldn't be able to do the same thing on the daytime half, or not half, but on the daytime portion. Cool. So I'm feeling like there needs to be a really kind of big mega city somewhere. So I'm just going to concentrate my lines right here. This is where it's all happening. This seems to be a bit of a hub on planet Ned. Cool. This is good. This is fun. I like to have fun. And this is how I have fun. I like to make my own little worlds and sort of think about what life might be like on those worlds. What are their politics like? What's their culture like? What's their food like? Don't you like asking these kinds of questions every now and then? Interesting, isn't it? And that's pretty much it. You can keep doing all sorts of things to planets, and you can add what you want to add, because remember, it is your world. Other things you could do. One other thing I like, this is another thing that I played with the other one of the other days that I was doing it. If I make a new layer here, and then I'll just go back to my normal colors. Yes, I do. I get it. I get a very Bob Ross like narration when I'm doing the planet demo. If you go into a new layer on the very top, and then you go into render, and then fibers. Okay, I'll fill up the whole thing. If I was to control click on the shape and then invert that shape and delete what I don't want, what I'm going to then do is I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees. I'm going to select it again and then spherize it. Like so. Then I'll deselect. I'll change the blending mode on this to screen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my levels function, Control L, and I'm just going to bring that down so it's not quite as intense. Maybe something like that. Cool. I'll also put it underneath the night so that the clouds in the night sky aren't as bright as the clouds in the daytime sky. That's clouds. And then what I could do is I could mask that. Whoops. I could mask that, and then with a bit of black, or actually what I could do is I could inverse the mask so it's completely hidden. I just press Control I there. And now with my brush, oops. But I need to remember to go back to just a regular sort of hard round brush or something like that, because the previous one I had was the stars and the cities brushes. So then I'll just make that a bit bigger. And now I can start to reveal clouds where I want them. See how every little step sort of adds a bit of realism. Cool. So I could keep going with this all day, I reckon. I could keep playing around with that and put all sorts of things on that. But yeah, eventually you get to the point where it's like, hang on, that looks like a That looks like a photo, or more or less, or pretty much. So there we go. How long has that been going for? I don't know. Started streaming 2 hours ago, and the first hour was just waiting. So yeah, probably about an hour, I guess. Cool. So yeah, that has introduced... What does that introduce? That's introduced, or maybe not introduced, but certainly that allows us to have a look at, firstly, layer management. So that's not a super complex document. As I said earlier, what I wanted to achieve... I'm just going to change the thumbnails just so they're not so big. Yeah, what I was hoping to achieve was something that, you know, by the end of the demo, it looks like it makes sense and it's not overly complex. So if I was starting to organize this document, what's this top layer? These are the cities. So we just go ahead and start, you know, retitling Night Shadow. This one here is our clouds. This is our atmosphere. And then our textures and colors. Ocean. So renaming stuff. Better to do it, you know, on the go, but not a huge deal if it's not done. Or if you do it at the end of the document. So base shape's done its job. Thank you, base shape. You've been very helpful, but you're not needed for the last bit. Stars, ocean, all our textures and our colors, our atmosphere, our clouds, our night shadow, and finally our cities on top of everything. There we go. What a planet. I hope you enjoyed the planet building demonstration. And yeah, it was good times. Yeah, layer management, masking we've done there. We've looked at a few filters. We've looked at a little bit of blending modes. We've done some brush effects. We've looked at layer styles. We've looked at importing files. We've done a hell of a lot in this document. So yeah, if you've gone through that and you've achieved something that looks similar to mine, great job. Excellent work. It was fun. Good thing. Good stuff, Kamal. I'm glad you had fun. Where are we? Eight watching, and I'm one of those 8 because I've got the stream open as well. So maybe 7 students. But it was a optional thing. Yeah, classes were cancelled officially, so I couldn't say, you know, you have to watch my YouTube channel, even though I'd like to sometimes. That would be fun. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I'm glad yeah, you enjoyed that, or I hope you did enjoy that. Yeah, yeah. Oh, Chow Min, thanks you. Magic. Yeah, that's good. It does feel like magic. Certainly when you're putting things like stars and cities onto a planet, you certainly feel pretty powerful. Cool. Thanks everybody. Again, apologies for the you know, for the sessions not running today. It's one of those things that happen, I guess, with technology failing and all that kind of thing. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Good job on that. I'll finish the stream now, and this will be recorded on the channel, so you'll be able to watch this again if you wanted to. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you later on. I'll see you next week, Friday, when hopefully our classes are running as usual. Peace out, people. Thank you.